my info. Ooh, have you looked on the bright side?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Infield Intel. This is a panel show where we discuss old Derby rules, new Derby rules, and the shenanigans that sometimes create the need for new rules, and just general Derby strategy and whatever comes up in our mind that's Derby related. Again, thanks for watching. And before we start, here are a few things to keep in mind. Gotham strives to create a safe space for our participants, community, and fans, and that extends to our events. We have a zero tolerance policy for any harassment, discrimination, bullying, hate speech, or abuse. Please help us ensure that tonight is fun and exciting for everyone by keeping the chat thoughtful. Please feel free to ask our commentators Derby-related questions and to respectfully engage with other participants. All right, so why don't we start by just going around the Twitch window, and introduce ourselves. So Tex, why don't we start with you? Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me. So my name is Lone Scar. Everybody calls me Tex. I skated for a few years on the bank track with TXRD in Austin, Texas, and joined Gotham as a ref a couple of years ago. I'm thrilled to be here tonight.
Great. Riot, hello.
Hi, Smackard. I'm Reverend Riot. I've been officiating roller derby as a referee since 2006, and been with Gotham for about 10 years. Also on and off the WFTDA Rules Committee for the past 10 years or so.
All right, Intijo, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me back. It's great to be here. I'm Intijo. I'm with Burning River Roller Derby. I have been in Derby since 2009 and was chair of the certification committee for a while and was also a WFTDA instructor for about 5 years.
Great, thanks. Burning River, that's Cleveland, right?
Yes.
Okay. Shug, our veteran former head ref.
Hey, well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm Sugar Daddy. I've been in roller derby for a while. I actually can't remember the year I started it, but I did do a couple of stints with Gotham and Philly and a few other leagues, and I was an instructor for a few years as well. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks for coming. Coffee, hello. You're muted.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. There was some stuff happening outside. I'm Coffee, or a strong female character. This I guess would be my 10th season of Derby, 9 years, if there were a season. I am a longtime official with Gotham. Started out skating for Pioneer Valley Roller Derby. I also coach the Gotham Juniors, and in my spare time with Derby, I am the WFTDA officiating officer after having done various jobs for certification over the years.
All right, thank you. Snark.
Hi, I'm Snark Tank. I started skating and basic training at Gotham in 2017 and officiating soon after that. I also skate with Suburbia, and I guess officiate with Suburbia Roller Derby. And I did manage in the times before coronavirus, the Queens of Pain.
All right. Suburbia, that is Yonkers, right?
That is in Yonkers. That is correct.
Okay. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Hewlett Smackard. Let's see, I joined roller derby in 2007. The first event I worked was the first ECDX. and that was amazing. The story is for another time. But I've been doing Derby more or less ever since. I took a year off, and I don't know how to count last year or this year, so I couldn't tell you how many years I've been doing this. But that was my cat Melvin, and he actually predates my involvement in Derby.
Whoa, Chad.
And yes, thank you for giving people tier 1 subs.
5 gift subscriptions. That's so nice.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, let's get this show on the road. The first clip we're going to watch is from, I believe, Fort Wayne playoffs a few years ago, Denver versus London in Fort Wayne, which would only happen in roller derby, of course. And what we're going to see in this jam is 2 skating out of bounds penalties. And what those penalties are, you're going to hear the crowd's going to be very unhappy with the penalties. And these penalties led to rules changes, but maybe not rules changes you would guess by watching the clip. And we're going to discuss that after we watch the clip.
Three blockers out there for London with 1 standing in the notorious RED penalty box. So London very briefly about to be at full speed. Lexi gets around lead jammer, Double H.
Beautiful work by Kamikaze Kitten. This is what she needed. Meanwhile, we do have Lester coming out of the penalty box. She is working the outside.
They are calling it. They're calling it skating out of bounds on Lester. She did just ever so slightly cut her path to the penalty box. And Double H, I said it about 2 minutes ago, but that might be it, as we're going to have now a full power jam for Kami.
Costly mistake there for Lester. A 5-point pass for Kamikaze Kitten. Beautiful work on the inside. Nice work. Active offense from her blockers, opening a hole. This is a 2-wall up at the front of Denver blockers. She's coming against, forcing her to the outside.
Skating out of bounds, being called on Kami. That's going to do it. That is going to do it unless... Well, we'll see how many points she got before she went out of bounds.
I'm not entirely sure what they saw there. I saw her getting blocked out of bounds, but on the inside is where she was, so the referees had a great
I will say that
point.
it's very rare to hear WXCA announcers questioning a call on a broadcast like that. It's pretty rare. And I understand London was quite upset. You see what the score it was, and that kind of cost them any chance of a comeback. We still had 5-point passes back then, so 20-point deficit would have been pretty easy. Not easy, but doable. Certainly doable.
For context, this was a semifinal game, and whoever won this game was going for first or second place, which meant they were automatically going to champs.
Right. Nobody was eliminated in this game. I mean, the loser got another chance, but I mean, you still want to not have to worry about it going into the last game. All right. So, I guess the question here was people thought that skating out of bounds call was suspect. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not supposed to skate out of bounds to avoid a hit or to dodge somebody or to get past it. It's similar to cutting the track, but not quite. And so let's talk about what happened after that, and maybe the rule change. When I was told what the rule change was, I was a little puzzled. So if anybody wants to chime in with what the rule change was, and then we can all be puzzled together.
Sure. So I actually requested this clip. So what you saw there was skating out of bounds to avoid a hit. But what the rule about a year later changed so that if you could skate out of bounds during the call off, if you had started the call off before you left the track, because that was determined to be basically a pretty non-impactful action. And
okay, go ahead.
What happened here, though, was it was a close game. It was really emotionally fraught. London eventually ended up coming in third at the tournament, so they were the first non US team to go to WFTDA championships, but at the time, no team outside of the US had gone to championships. So it was a really big deal for them. And there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot going on in the room. And this was the first ever D1 playoff. It was the first non-regional playoff to ever happen. So emotions were really high. And afterwards, there was an internal message board system for the WFTDA where people could talk about rules, talk about things that they wanted to change, and et cetera, et cetera. And there was a pretty intense conversation about skating out of bounds rules that eventually led to a rules change.
Now, this is what puzzled me.
Mm-hmm.
The rule change was if you're calling the jam off, you can't skating out of bounds, but it's not going to be called. But that was a 2-minute jam. No one was calling the jam off. So
what I'll say is that I think it speaks more to the rules change process, right? So attention was brought to something in the rules that wasn't working indirectly by talking about this, right? Or not, sorry, Matt is shaking his head at not working. Something in the rules that was potentially more reasonable to change. That conversation was started because someone was passionate about something that was adjacent, but not the same. So because the conversation was started by someone who probably wanted to eliminate all skating out of bounds rules, it went to a closer examination of skating out of bounds, which led to a change in what that rule was.
Is it kind of a compromise?
I mean, I think so. It was also just a very interesting. It's very interesting when you're an official at a tournament and one call takes over all conversation for the weekend, leads to tournament clarifications, leads to referee decisions. And it's.
But how infrequent is that really? I mean, I haven't officiated at any tournaments, but I have attended a number of tournaments. And I will say that I don't think I've walked away from any tournament where there hasn't been some heavily debated calls or situations at every level. You know, and I'm just saying within a smaller circle of people, not even like Derby Twitter and like on higher levels. Like I think that everybody has a lot of opinions, and you know, everybody walks away from every tournament with like a lot to say about things. You know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the only one having that experience.
No.
I feel like that's an entirely
Didn't think so.
Experience. But there's always usually like the one call that people walk, like that the larger Derbyverse ends up discussing and dissecting and focusing on. Whereas each individual team will have the thing that they didn't like or that they did like. Each referee or official walks away with like, oh, I could have done that better. But then there's the one call.
There's always one call.
At least one. I'd say at least one. But again, that's my personal experience.
Shuggy, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was saying maybe it's just my experience, but it seemed like that happened every year early on. And then there was some really controversial call every year. And then it seems to not be as frequent. I mean, not every other year kind of thing, but it did seem to be addressed through an engagement of the rules process to be more responsive to the community over a long period of time.
And I think, I mean, we talked a little bit last show about the rulemaking process, and I think that part of it is that the WFCA got bigger, and so each individual voice got a little bit quieter. When you have 12 leagues, 1/12 of those leagues being upset about something can really lead to change. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, and that where we're at now is good or bad, but it is a different dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, also, we used to have rules representatives at playoffs.
Right.
Like the rules committee would send people to playoffs to have conversations about difficult calls.
And clarifications right before the tournament.
Oh, I remember that.
I would say in general that the ability of roller derby to change its rules in response to feedback and specific examples is a strength of the sport, and something that has and will continue to allow it to adapt and stay relevant in the future. And you can look at other sports for examples, like compare baseball, which hasn't changed a whole lot, to basketball, which changes very frequently, and see which one has a faster growing viewership. So in general, I think like we should be looking at the rules, we should be changing them. The question is always like, whose voice is being listened to and why? And I don't know anything about what happened here, so I have no idea if that's even a relevant comment to this situation.
So,
but
let's talk about the rule that got discussed, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the conversation that spun out and ended up changing the rule. I think, again, I might be remembering poorly, but I think it's why do we have this rule? If you're a jammer and you take yourself out of bounds, you're already at a disadvantage. And the rationale for not being able to skate out of bounds to avoid a block is that blocking is an inherent part of the game, and it is part of the strategy of blockers is to not just knock you out, but knock you down, especially earlier in roller derby. So by removing yourself from the field, you change that dynamic. That turned into, but what about in the last 5 seconds when the jammer intends to be calling it off? Well, no, but you can still get knocked down. Well, what if they've already successfully called it off and the whistles are blowing? Well, okay, maybe then. And that's where we get the rules changed.
Well, impact of gameplay. I mean, I think that's the basic thing. I mean, I don't want to be like, well, Rev, I remember showing up to classroom time many years ago, and I feel like that's one of the things at the basis of the pyramid. We have safety and then impact of gameplay, and it's when you're dissecting, you have to dissect down to that moment, because like you said, if you're changing the field, the dynamic on the actual track, if you're just skating to avoid a hit, where the actual basis of this game is to use one's body physically to interact with other players. So it is dissecting down to that point of impact, which is very fine.
Okay, so let's move on. We're going to watch a clip from a Gotham game this time. This is going to be Gotham versus Boston at, I believe, ECDX. Oh yeah, I was at this game. I remember this now. Okay, and you're going to see something you see pretty often these days. Watch Bonnie. She's going to hit the other jammer out of bounds, and you're going to see something that you see all the time now, but maybe not so much back then, and the crowd did not like it.
It's a friendly game. It's ladylike.
Ah, there we go.
Oh my goodness! Bonnie Thunders knocks Clarity Way out and then starts skating almost all the way back to the jam line.
She wants to get a running start for this pass. This should be interesting.
And here she comes. Harlan Viva trying to go for an anorexia going but denied. Pina Colada goes no. What? Jammer.
Wow, Bonnie Thunders with a full run. Dancing.
Okay, I see the other jammer did eventually get out. So, this is obviously from quite some time ago. And I don't, the rule, of course, you all know the rule. If you get hit out, you have to go in behind the person who hit you out. And there are no restrictions really on where the jammer can go. So if the jammer hits you, the other jammer out, then, she can do what you just saw there, go all the way around the track. And I see teams using this a little bit more sophisticatedly now, where they'll knock somebody out of bounds and then just draw them back just far enough to get them reabsorbed by the pack, which is pretty cool to see. But that's not what happened here. So let's talk about this. I don't remember when the rule changed to make this possible, or even if the rule ever changed and somebody just realized it was possible. But this is an example, I think, about somebody finding a loophole or something that really wasn't intended by anybody who was writing the rules. And we just said, okay, all right, I guess we're going to keep this. What do y'all think?
it's very interesting because I think that this is probably one of our best examples of something that was completely novel at the time of the clip and is now inherently a part of gameplay, because a lot of the things that we look at caused changes in rules or changes in strategy because people didn't like how it impacted the game and the experience of being part of the game. And this is something that became incredibly common.
It wasn't the rule change. It was related to direction of gameplay, right? And there was a rule change, and I remember as a referee thinking, "Oh, now they can skate the other direction." And then there was a lot of controversy. It is that derby, right? You probably remember this because you were involved with rules more than I was. But I remember it from an official, just seeing the change in the rules, and all of a sudden, we had to be worried about people going the other direction and consider that. It's vague, it's foggy in my memory, so I think it was a long time ago.
I mean, it definitely would have been a long time ago. The rules just kind of always presumed counterclockwise skating, I think, and that's what, like, there. If you read like the 1.0 rule set, half of it is like an advertisement for roller derby. Like that it doesn't use the word awesome in there is kind of surprising. But it was very much a description of what you're going to see. Like, read this as you sit there waiting for us and drinking your PBR, and this is what you're going to see. And because it was descriptive and not prohibitive, a lot of things got allowed in and led to that debate of like, okay, well, we didn't anticipate this, but should we allow it and continue to allow it, or should we not? And this is a great example where, you know, you have to come in behind the person that knocked you out. We didn't think that they might go backwards that far. We didn't think that they would go backwards at all. When blockers started doing it, they would get out of play, and that would be the end of that, because then they could be re-entered in front of. But then jammers doing it can go as far as they want. Should we allow that?
I mean, my hot take on this would be this falls under the Rev Riot rule of, is this how we play the game? Like, another thing that came up in the pyramid, if I remember correctly. You know, and this obviously, like, I'm betraying my own background as a bank track skater because we don't go the opposite direction. But like, it does feel so, okay, yes, strictly speaking, this was by the rules, but it's also kind of a dick move, you know, and I think it does kind of have a question of like, is this how the game should actually be played? Is this in the spirit that we want the game to be? I don't personally like it in general, but you know, I also recognize that that's not the prevailing opinion.
Strategically, it's well played. Like, especially if you are jamming and your pack, you have less players on your side, and you're looking to create a situation where you're both running down the clock and trying to take advantage of playing down. Like, whether or not it's a dick move, it's well played, and as you know, Tech said, and I think everybody else has kind of agreed, it's not against the rules, and it's, whether it's a bending of the rules, it's an interesting way to have gameplay grow as the rules grow themselves. I think it's partially what keeps gameplay exciting in roller derby, which is what keeps the sport exciting. You know, as Tex also said, you know, there are a lot of sports that we are a relatively new sport, and gameplay is more exciting in the way where it does keep changing. There are these rules that we keep refining, and I think that as players develop strategies to reflect that, that's what keeps the sport interesting and what keeps officials very, very busy.
Yeah, but it keeps the sport interesting for skaters. It keeps the sport interesting for officials and keeps us busy. But is it good for fans to watch? Because we've also seen a decline in, I mean, many leagues, I think, have seen a decline in a fan base and people not coming to watch slow derby or derby going backwards.
Right. And I think probably more controversial, though, is blockers doing this. Right? In terms of, like, your question directly. Like, we've talked about, is it good for the sport?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And-
it's going to be more common with blockers doing it. And so that makes it more of a pressing question to answer versus you just don't see this with the jammer going all the way back around the track very often or as often.
You definitely don't see it as often with the jammer taking one all the way back, which is weird. I think that you're able to get 4 of the other team going with you more commonly than you can get the person that you knocked out. But as far as like, is it good for Derby? Like, I'm not gonna venture myself out onto that limb, but I do think that one thing that we like that I'm willing to discuss is how does it match our elevator pitch to like if you meet somebody new, like a coworker, and like you do roller derby, so and so said you do roller derby. What's that? And we have like 30 seconds to elevator pitch roller derby. It's very rare that we talk about standing around for 2 minutes, right? Like, and I feel like the things ought to match. But one other thing I want to mention about this, and because we're talking about how the community as a whole shapes the way the rules move forward, is just like I wonder sometimes how much Bonnie being one of the first to do this versus if most of roller derby first saw somebody like, I'm not casting aspersions here, but like, well, let's just say like a less liked jammer, a jammer that people were less likely to be fans of, or
like
had a
Toaster Town's jammer.
Right. Yeah. Jolly Rocket. Right. Like how the world might have reacted to that instead.
And I mean, also for like Bonnie at the time, she's not only is she one of the best jammers in the sport, or if not the best jammer in the sport at this time, but like she's also running. Is she running games at this point? Like she is in charge of WFTDA games, so she's like a very respected and influential person in a way that's not just like as an athlete, but also as an administrator in the sport. So what does that mean for things that I don't have an answer to this. Well, actually, before we move on, Rip asked a question in chat that I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the question, and it's going on in the chat, is who's Derby for? Is Derby for the fans? Who and the other people in the chat are chiming in. Who are the fans? I think for years, if not well over a decade and a half, most of the people I see at Derby events are Derby players or retired Derby players. So who we say is this good for the fans? Who are we talking about exactly?
Well, I think it's interesting, when you talk about it, Derby used to be by the skaters for the skaters. Now it's by Derby for Derby. Do fans include that? Because I started out as a roller derby fan and then kind of got sucked into officiating. But I used to go to games that were sold out in Chicago, and it was exciting, and people were fans and they did go to watch. And then as the slow game came in, as the stopped game came in, people started going. Like my husband won't go see a game anymore because he's bored. And that I think is something to take into account, especially if part of the model of Derby is having these produced bouts that you're asking people to pay for. That's, I think, where we draw the line. If you're talking about is it a spectator sport or participant sport? If it's a participant sport, don't ask people to come pay for it if you're not going to have something that people want to watch.
I mean, ultimately, fans are keeping the lights on with the business models of most leagues. And it would be a great luxury to just say we're doing this for us, by us. But, I think in most cases, like, the fact of the matter is most leagues couldn't afford to have, for example, a practice space to play in. You're looking at a significant reorganization in the way we play roller derby if you just say this is no longer about having spectators come and watch. And I personally think it's just more fun to have people come and see you. It's more exhilarating to have spectators there. It's part of the experience. And it's a way to draw people into the community.
I think it depends on the league, though, because honestly, when you have smaller leagues and leagues that are out kind of further out from larger cities, they are more participant-based leagues. It is more about what's going on internally and less about necessarily putting on those bouts. So I think that the dynamic changes also depending from league to league about where the emphasis is being placed on either gameplay or showpersonship, excuse me. You know, and it's a unique experience being at Gotham, and that at a very, very small league where honestly our dues keep the lights on. We don't, we have very rarely have people who come to our bouts, and we have very few bouts. And the emphasis becomes then on the gameplay and the internal community.
And I think that, I mean, there's two things that we've already brought up here. Tex, you mentioned, right, that like basketball is much better at responding to things that grow the fan base. And all professional sports, even the less responsive ones, like baseball, are run by owners who the owners make the decisions about how the game's going to change, motivated by a desire to get fans to watch it, right? But also with what you're saying, Snark, it feels very much to me like beer league hockey and stuff. And I can't imagine a beer league hockey team or league being like, we can't change that rule because that's what the NHL does, right? They're gonna make it fun for themselves, and they're gonna focus on that because that's their sphere of influence. And we have this mentality, I think, in roller derby where like we all have to be playing the exact same game, or it's not. It doesn't count. It's not really roller derby, and maybe that's part of the issue.
Okay, let's go on to our next clip, which I believe is this Brooklyn Queens? Oh, it's Wendy? Okay, we're gonna go on to Wendy Charm. This is a beta test. Speaking of rules changes and how they happen, this is when we were thinking about getting rid of minor penalties. And this was a beta test of what would Derby look like if we got rid of minor penalties? And, you know, in hindsight, of course, we know that we got rid of minors and we're better off for it. But, you know, we didn't know that at the time. And I think what you'll see in this clip is we'll see players pushing the limits and trying to find out exactly what they can get away with under a new rule set, which, you know, that happens. So let's take a look and see this.
And number 30, Athena to Crime.
Alrighty then. So far, we haven't. I haven't seen any intentional manipulation of the minors yet. I wonder if we'll see that more in the second period.
Bit of a split pack here. I Am Pain up front, Athena to Crime in the back, and I Am Pain is through. Lead jammer for Charm City.
That's good.
I Am Pain.
Good opportunity for Charm City to bring that deficit down a little bit. Nice ownership of the front there.
I hear another whistle. I hear a major track cut. Just a blocker as Athena to Crime is now out of the pack. But I Am Pain is on a scoring pass right now.
Yeah, that was a major cut. I didn't see it transpire, but we're going to see a lot more major cuts probably.
Yeah, you know, I just saw something very interesting as Charm, blocker, 415 Holly Go Hardly pushed a Windy blocker, gave her a nice solid push in the back. She skated for about 3 feet, cleared some space. But right there was no loss of position. It's a no call. I think I'm in love.
All right. Well, okay. We saw that, and obviously the announcers at the time saw it. So I'm a little curious. Is that a block in the back now? It was a legal target zone, right? Wasn't it? Or no, it was forearm, wasn't it? Okay. Anybody can chime in. All right. Well, I guess that means it was pretty close, too close to call. Which I guess if it's too close to call,
it's also keep in mind that we're watching the footage through a screen share, so it's very fuzzy for us.
Yep. Same here.
No, I'm saying that I don't know if we could
Good point.
see it that well.
Yeah.
Not sure I've seen Major Wood jammer ref.
What?
Is that a joke, Dredd?
No, I mean he mostly does OPR now, right?
But
because he
Yeah, I guess so.
This is an old clip, though. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's
like
true.
We're all squinting and leaning in at the I'm like, oh, okay. Trying to see.
Yeah, who would the maybe forum be on?
Oh.
You'll see it right about now. Okay. Yeah, see, she puts her arms up saying like, "Oh, it wasn't me. I didn't do anything." She's sort of, I guess if that was called as a major now, we might argue about it. There might have been a review, but so I guess what I want to talk about here is really when the rules change, people push the limits. And I remember back in the day when we started changing the cut rule, Gotham would start practicing with the new rules before they were official. And that, I think, gave us an advantage when it came time for champs and the postseason. It's because we were even testing the limits before everybody else. Should you look dubious about that?
Well, no, I think it's absolutely right. And that's the role of the players and that's the role of all the teams, is to figure out what the rules are. How can I exploit them to my advantage and push them, find the loopholes. I think that's really strategic, and come up with something new that hasn't been thought of. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, we didn't think about that. What do we do about it?
And I think specifically here, right? Like, so these ECDX games were the first time that the WFTDA allowed a game to count if you weren't playing by the current WFTDA rules.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And it was because so many people in authority thought that no minors might be the way forward, but you couldn't get anyone to play those games and try it out if it wasn't going to count.
Right.
So like big ups to both the WFTDA and Philly for organizing this at ECDX. But so especially in those situations, you had players that were going out trying to find those gray areas and identify those so that people would see how it might get called, see if the rules committee would then say that was right, or maybe we'd like to see it slightly different, to make people more comfortable with that. But yeah, I agree with Chug. Like finding those limits and those lines and what is allowed or not with new rules is definitely like the reason we have a season before playoffs.
Very strategic. Yeah. Here's a bit of trivia. I asked Endless Justin one time, because I had access to him, where did minors come from? And he told me it was actually a compromise. They didn't have minors, and then all of a sudden it was a compromise. They said, okay, well, I have two groups of people that have these opinions on rules. Let's add minors to the rule set.
73 Blueberry makes a good point in the chat that officials don't necessarily want to officiate a game that's not going to be sanctioned or not regulation, not played under WFTDA rules, which is, one of the ways you get assignments at WFTA postseason is by reffing sanctioned games or reffing at least games played under the WFTA rule set, regulation games. So I think that might be another reason teams might be reluctant to. Go ahead.
It's also just on a practical level. My life is a lot easier when I only have to think of one rule set when I'm officiating, right? Like, it's not just that. I also, the resume building is absolutely part of it, and it has been a part of it. But like, there are definitely times when I'm like, I have to prep for this one big game that's next week, and you're asking me to pretend the rules are different tonight. Is that going to screw me up next weekend?
But I also think that that's maybe something that officials should learn how to get used to.
Oh, yeah.
I've talked with a hockey official who would officiate women's and then kids and then college, maybe all in the same week, and they all had different rule sets to adjust. Or like if you officiate WFTDA and then you go to JRDA and you have to learn those rules kind of on the fly. I think that helps us be a little adaptable.
Yeah, I think it gets a little bit easier every time that you do it, right? And that is, I mean, remember that a lot of the selection process, not that I'm telling anybody in this group something new, I feel like, but a lot of the selection process and a lot of the evaluation process was created at the beginning by officials, for officials, but all officials that almost universally had no experience officiating before they became roller derby officials. So it was like, we need to know exactly how many games you did by WFTDA standards so that we can evaluate you on those standards, as opposed to like, you know, if one or two rules changed, that's probably fine because you still demonstrated understanding of sports.
Yeah, I think it also is, like, for me at least, very dependent on what the change is and what that means. But like I also think I actually think like beta test scrimmages are kind of fun because everyone's kind of messy, and it's fun to suddenly realize that everyone's kind of messy and everyone's messing up and no one is expecting you to be perfect. But that's a different thing.
And great place to practice saying got it wrong.
Yeah.
Whoops.
I wonder if there's any roller derby in the States this year, if teams will be a little bit more willing to, you know, have some fun and play with the rules a little bit. I kind of hope so because I like that.
I can't imagine we'll have anything that isn't fun this year.
All right. With that, speaking of things that aren't fun, let's talk about this next clip coming up, which is the good old times of the two-whistle jam start. And Brooklyn, this is a Gotham home game, Brooklyn Queens. That subtitle tells you everything you need to know about this clip. So let's just watch and enjoy. Oh, good old Hunter College.
Oh, great.
Good times.
I see Steel Magnolia in the box. Hippie Strong Stocking sitting in the box, I think. Or is that Steel Magnolia?
Here's me.
Are we defining a pack before the jam starts?
Oh no, it is Hippie
No,
Strong
I believe the
Stocking
jam
is
is.
on the.
Well, you see the pack
jam
being
started.
defined.
The jam has started.
Shiny pants. I don't know. Those shiny speed ruffles. Susie Hot Rod is ready.
I know it's hard to tell, but they are supposedly playing roller derby right now.
Ready.
This is derby.
Steel's got.
I remember a couple of these jams where blockers.
See, now
like
this is boring.
Yes.
This is boring.
How long does this last? This is painful.
They can make up those points that they want.
So
Brooklyn
one
doesn't
of
care.
the players is in the penalty box and is about to come out. Just for people.
I believe.
But the Queen's pivot.
I've had jams like this where
Wow.
skaters would turn and be like, "Are you guys gonna start the jam?"
And the crowd wants them to skate. Steel Magnolia
Beautiful
is
T-stop.
out
Look at that. Look at
of
that gorgeous T-stop.
There's Veronica Ake.
Oh, Lord. Oh, that happened. That truly happened.
Yep.
No pack from
Such a
Steel
good
Magnolia.
reference.
Smart job. Amphetamine tries to hop the line.
I couldn't
quite
tell.
work.
Did Boss go to the
Some
box there
people,
for
but
breaking the
I'm not
pack?
sure the refs are going to call it.
What?
Amphetamine
Yeah. So this is an example of just neither team had any incentive to start the jam because they both had skaters in the box, and there's no incentive to start playing roller derby for either team. So they're just going to sit there and wait for their players to come out. I don't know why Brooklyn didn't try to. I don't know why. Well, Queens did eventually start the jam because it was once their skater got out of the box, it was in their interest to start the jam. But yeah, I think that is an example of where we really did change something for the fans and also for the skaters. I don't think the skaters like.
That's a
Go ahead,
mess.
Ryan.
Yeah, no, I did. No, that's terrible. That's just bad roller derby.
I mean,
That's
Agree.
such a
I
hot
agree.
roller derby.
I agree with that. That's terrible.
Because I've definitely
No, thank
been
you.
a referee at times and been like wanting to say to the other referees, like, why don't they do this? Why don't so knowing that Queens is going to get their blocker out first, right, and then have motivation to actually start the jam, because they'll be at a numerical advantage. I'm genuinely asking, does Brooklyn here have a motivation to start the jam earlier so that they can take advantage of the numerical equality?
Probably.
What a great point.
But they
Shouldn't we all be
don't, so
playing roller
obviously they
derby?
disagreed.
Yes.
Oh, passive offense.
Well, and like, so we've been talking about other sports, and we always talk about other sports rules. I think it's really interesting that like the point at which this comes along in roller derby's history is roughly the same point in like football's history, where people are like willing to take a tie game at 0-0 because it counts rankings wise as a win, and roughly like just as far into basketball where they had to create the shot clock because people were like, I'm good just dribbling here forever. Let's just keep doing that. I wonder if it's a natural progression in sports that like you have to get over passive offense.
Interesting.
What rule changed to stop this? I'm not versed enough in WIFTA history to know.
WFTDA.
This is a 2-whistle start, so the whole pack had to get over the pivot line so that the jammers could be released. We also are at 1 minute penalties at this time too.
Okay.
So if you're trying to break somebody out of the box and they're sitting there for a long time, they could be sitting there a long time.
Okay, so there were 2 whistles, but the second one didn't blow. It wasn't a specific time. It was after the pack got passed.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It was not that fun. Could be very unfun to watch. It was very confusing as a spectator at that time.
Mhm.
Yes.
So
it was,
Yeah, why
section
do it?
260 there where like all of one team basically just took a knee, that so they're not defining the pack, and that's eventually what started happening is teams would start on their knee so that there was no pack, so that the second whistle would immediately blow. And based on that, and that was dangerous, we were like, if you all just want to start the jammers right away, we'll just start the jammers right away. And we went to 1 whistle starts.
Thanks. I hate it.
Right. But it was
Yeah, that's great.
agreed.
but it wasn't that like starting down was never never taken away. It was the incentive was taken away. Now adopting an intentionally unblockable position after the jam has started is now illegal. So you cannot take a knee now after the jam has started.
It was a compromise rule.
And I remember specifically after this game being very upset that it happened. And
because it's
yep.
bad.
I remember
And-
Smackard was really upset after this game.
And I was like, look, 1 whistle starts, house rule. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And everyone in the league was like, we cannot, to go back to your point, Ryan, we can't do a house rule because that will mess our teams up when we get to postseason play, when we get to interleague play.
Right. They wouldn't be practiced at standing there like that.
Right, exactly.
Watching this clip feels like looking back at your like awkward middle school photos and just being like, no, why did I do that?
It makes my skin hurt. It makes me itchy when I see it. I'm like, nobody's moving. What's happening?
I want to, like, Jill was saying that she used to go to Windy City games that were sold out. And I used to come down and help ref some of those games. And when this first started showing up, they would do double headers, right? So 2 teams would play while the other 2 watched, and then they'd switch. And what was most amusing to me as a referee that was like, well, you can make the rules, is that the booing from the stands was led by the other 2 teams that were watching, who were like, this isn't roller derby. And then they'd switch places, and those people that were just booing would do that, and then get booed by the people that were just doing it.
I mean, it's
Community.
a good example of how like you have to play the rules of the game in order to win the game, even when you make those rules.
Yep.
I do remember you officiating while I was in the stands, right?
Sorry. I'm going to be the first to apologize for that.
Also, yes, or Shoveler booing the refs. I have been with Shoveler at the UIC Pavilion with him booing the refs, in fact. Because I also lived in Chicago, but I officiated for the outfit primarily. So it's interesting if you look back on how officials are our own and each other's worst critics, unfortunately.
All right. So let's move on because we've got a bunch of clips that I'd love to get through before our time runs out. And what we're going to watch now is we're going to watch a couple of games of Gotham. Speaking of different rule sets, for Gotham All-Stars were willing and able and ready to play Los Angeles on the bank track in Los Angeles. So that's what we're going to watch right now. And the first clip is going to be Gotham trying that drawback derby on the bank track. And let's see how it works out.
Isabel Ray was like my cat. I just find her by listening to the cowbell. Although I don't have cowbells on my cats, I just have.
Wait, cowbells. I just don't clip his claws. I hear him walking down the hall.
Cheapskate! Almost to the front of the pack, hits the wall! Giving Roy Scott a chance to get the lead driver position. Tell you right now, Cheapskate, she's got to have her blockers up there to help her get a path. By executing a good job of putting
A lot of Gotham people falling down with the style play does on the bank track.
And just for anybody that's not familiar, bank track does all the penalties at the end of the jam, so that's why nobody's going to the box right.
Slowing everybody down. Nope, that's the end of the jam.
All right, and only 1 minute jams, as I think we saw there.
Did someone try and pull someone backwards? Because I didn't see it.
I don't know that we saw that because I don't think
it's not.
I'm not sure
legal.
it's possible.
It's certainly possible.
Oh wait, you've played bank track.
Yeah, it is at least now, and to the best of my knowledge, has for a long time been illegal to skate in a clockwise direction in any version of a bank track rule set. But for some reason, I thought I don't know. I just didn't understand what the clip was that we were going to see.
No, I think when Gotham tried to do this, it was more of like do it within the bounds of the RDCL rule set. So you can't skate backwards, but you can drop very slowly.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it. Yeah, because, that doesn't work great on the bank track either. The bank track is built to force you to keep skating forwards as fast as possible. You certainly can play very slow roller derby, and there are a lot of bank track leagues that are doing that to great effect. LA in particular does that to spectacular effect. But it's just on a different scale than you can do on a flat track. It is in fact in the RDC rule set.
Sorry.
It's in the RDCL rule set that you can't stop. You can't stop and you can't skate clockwise. So that's not going to be a super effective strategy on the bank track, according to my understanding of the current rule set.
And Smackard, we were talking about this beforehand, that this first clip is Gotham not adjusting, right? Like it's Gotham trying to play their style of game on a different bank track just to see kind of what's going to happen.
I think that is, you hear commentators on television and other sports saying, okay, well, if, this team gets the other team to play their game, then they're going to win. Gotham style at the time certainly was defense first because we had Bonnie and Susie, and what are you going to do about that? So we're just going to play defense. So, I do remember that Gotham lost this game, and but we did adjust the bank track eventually. because Gotham went on the Australian tour and beat LA every game on that tour. So we clearly did adjust. It's a different game, I think. When we were talking about different rule sets and adjusting to different rule sets. I don't. If the next clip is ready, I'd like to run it, and because it shows another difference between the two rule sets. And WIFTA is the only roller derby league. There's like roller derby rule set. I think it's 5 or 6 different rule sets. And
depends on the weekend.
Yes. And the WFTDA rules are the only one where the lead jammer is the skater, the jammer who got out of the pack legally first. And in every other rule set, it's whoever jammer is in front, that's the lead jammer. And I believe this clip shows how that might change the game.
Broken into here. There's a homeless guy taking a shit in your driver's seat right now as we speak. There you go. It's making me homesick, isn't it? It's like a Waffle House. There's the pack. Look at the jammers. By the way, Filipino Town is fantastic. Thanks, Filipino Town, for letting us put up our dirty dog motion on here.
Okay, you can see they're focusing on the pack, but the two jammers went out in front there, and they're chasing each other.
And Bonnie's behind, right?
Yeah. Okay, so they called that jam right away. The lead jammer changed, didn't like what she saw in front of him, called it in front of her, and just called the jam. So,
I mean, I think it's also worth noting that this doesn't happen all the time. I think it's more frequent that you see in bank track jams that you're going to get one jammer who gets out of the pack and starts scoring points far enough in advance of the other jammer that the lead change doesn't really happen. As a spectator, it's super exciting when it does, when you have two jammers out and they're quite literally racing. I mean, it is, I think it really kind of gets at like the heart of what's exciting about watching roller derby for me. But yeah, I mean, it's great when it does happen, but it doesn't happen all of the time.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, so, right, in WFTDA play, there was some video that was going around last week that was like somebody that just explains different rules, like different sports rules, and he broke it down there, right? Like WFTDA roller derby, the idea is become lead, score as many points as you can before the other jammer hits. I don't think that that's necessarily different for WFTDA versus any other type, but bank track, when it's a close game and you do see those steals, that is really exciting to watch. Where like they're trying to like just edge up a lead, and all of a sudden the other jammer can swoop in and just take away that ability to call the jam off.
Sorry, Rev. What was the last point?
Just like that jammer's the other jammer's ability to swoop in and take that lead so that they can get those same points before calling it off, just to keep it even, is really exciting to watch.
Yeah, I totally agree. The fact that it's getting out first doesn't make it a done deal. Like it's still possible for the other team to overtake. I'd be curious to see some actual data on this. Anecdotally, I think you're just as likely to end up with close or widespread games in either rule set, but on a jam by jam basis, it can make the game feel closer even when the score doesn't reflect that.
I don't think we've ever seriously considered changing the lead jammer rule in WFTDA. I don't think that's ever even come up, has it?
Everything comes up.
No, that's true. Yes, that's true.
I was gonna say they get weird.
But I don't think it's ever made the ballot beyond a prioritization ballot of like, should we look at this? And everyone's like, no, just.
For what it's worth, I also really like 1 minute jams. I think they're great. But again, not a popular opinion probably with this group.
I think it changes the dynamic, and going back to the conversation we had earlier about like what is what is good for roller derby, what is good for the fans, what is more exciting to watch. Like, those two rules work in conjunction much differently than 2-minute jams and lead jammer being determined in static for the whole jam, right? Like, it just is a different game, despite how many similarities the two have.
Okay. Now, we're running low on time, but this is the part. These are the clips that I really wanted to get to, because we were talking about roller derby, who's it for, what makes it an exciting game, what makes the game fun to watch, what makes the game fun to play, etc.
Can we, before we start, can we give an extra special shout out to Chad Nerd Derby, who's in chat with us, who shot this footage and is doing really incredible things for roller derby streaming and has been. And this footage it's good.
Yeah, it's very good footage. So this is Gotham versus Victoria at summer of 2019. The Georgia W. Tush Classic. This is not Gotham versus Victoria at playoffs. This is a regular season game. And it was, for me, it was one of the strangest games I've ever seen. And there was an official review after this jam. So let's watch this jam and we'll see what made it so unusual.
2010 era score at this point.
Anna Pavyova returns to the jammer line for Victorian Roller Derby League. Misty Maven on the other side for Gotham. If you're just joining us, Gotham in the white, Victoria in the blue.
Anna Pavyova sent to the outside by Benita Applebaum. Has to regroup. Misty Maven has been sent to the rear of the pack as well. Anna Pavyova gains lead, goes down to the infield, and it has to, and has a no pass, no penalty situation. And some confusion and penalty calls. Anna Pavyova picking up the track cut penalty.
Okay, yeah, that was a no pass. That was overruled by a different official, and now Anna Pavyova sitting in the Restaurant Gus penalty box. Misty Maven on the power jam for Gotham.
So, Misty Maven takes a spill. Gotham fortifying the rear of the line, trying to prevent the drawback. Bianca Sciaretta has to re-enter behind Misty Maven. And Misty Maven hops around the outside. She is lead. Penalty to Anna Pavyova has expired. She takes a hard hit from Benita Applebaum.
Yeah, Benita Applebaum has been doing great work. Working in tandem here with Livy. Maven recycled. We're in the back straightaway. Bianca Sciaretta curls around Maven, but now they're both back into the original positions.
And a knot of skaters stuck in the back stretch. Advancing slowly, ever so slowly, to turns 3 and 4.
Applebaum and Darrell take down Pavy.
Misty Maven spins, tries to find, gets some movement out of the pack. And a 2-minute jam, 3 points for Gotham, none for Victoria. Gotham leading by a score of
I want to echo what Dredd is saying in the chat here. Like, for how little happened, that was an exhausting game to officiate.
It was an exhausting derby game to watch as a tournament head. Like, seriously, just sitting there and focusing on everything and being ready for anything and being ready to support officials for anything. And it was just like, mentally, there was like this sheen of like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And except for not, because we understood everything that was happening, but it fell together in a way that was not fully expected.
Should Tex, Snark, have you seen this game before? I don't think any of you have. Were you there?
I have not.
Yeah.
I've seen footage, but I was not there.
Okay. Like, this is honestly, it was pretty unusual in this game, as we'll see in the next clip, for them to even get that far down the track, that down the first straightaway and into down the second straightaway and into turn 3. That was pretty rare in that game. And there was an official review for a misconduct, but I can't see what that could have been about. So let's discuss this and then take it in, continue discussion through the next clip. Derby is pretty much played like this nowadays, I think. For whatever reason, both teams decided they were just going to strangle each other. And, if the game was won 2 points to nothing, then a win's a win. So I guess it raises the question, is that good for Derby? Is that exciting to watch? What does good for Derby mean? I mean, all those questions are raised by this.
I mean, it's interesting because I remember when Victoria first got into playoffs and came over to the States and brought their style with them, and everybody was just kind of, we don't know how to deal with this. And then they adapted to that style. And that's kind of become what this is with all this bracing. It's made things incredibly difficult to officiate. And that's, in a sense, it's kind of exciting, because when minors went away, there was an element of difficulty that went away as well, for the good, I think, of the game. But this brings back in that, oh my gosh, this is a really tough game to officiate, and I've got to watch. You're trying to figure out where to watch, and you're trying to figure out what's your near focus and what's your far focus. A spectator, when I'm in the stands watching a game like this, even as an official, I can't see from my vantage point what the officials are seeing and what they're calling and why they're calling it, and then it becomes boring to me.
I do think for an inexperienced spectator in particular, there's a level of opacity that's really hard to get past.
Yeah.
And, if you want, we can debate whether or not Derby should be for the fans. But ultimately, if you want to have spectators watch, then we have to give them something to look at.
Well, and I think even for the skaters, like what Jill is referring to, right? Like what opened it up, but it became less of a black box of like the refs will make calls, but you won't necessarily know why or for what, and eventually like you'll just be told you got a fourth minor. And I think that this style of play reintroduces a level of that black box, that opacity that you're talking about, where it's just like they like the referees feel like they see the same thing 100 times, and then one time they're like, but that one I got a call. The skaters feel like they experience the same things 100 times, and one of them gets called. The fans feel like they're watching the same thing, and for no reason, one of those gets called. And I think that this is much more exciting to watch than the 2 minutes that we watched of Gotham just standing around, literally, even though they're moving roughly the same amount. So, like, it's not about the skating that's fun, but this, I feel like, is bad for Derby in that sense of, like, you should be able to understand the decisions that skaters are reacting to, and you can't in this.
Yeah, excellent point.
I mean, that being said,
go ahead.
there's a lot of contact, and I do think that can be exciting for people to watch. And there are lots of, I'm thinking of football, which is just the prime example of a sport that, by anyone who doesn't understand the rules, just seems like a hot mess. There's a lot going on at one time. A lot of it's in really close contact. The rules are totally Byzantine. But once you kind of get inside, it can be really great and fun to watch. And maybe that's kind of the comparison with this style of roller derby.
Well, I think it also builds the suspense of when is the wall going to break? What is going to happen? Which, when you have faster style gameplay, I think sometimes there's so much going on that you become desensitized to the slower moments of strategic positioning or slower moments on the track. So I think there's no easy answer to. Everybody's had very valid points when discussing the effect that it has on both officials, both skating and non-skating officials, and as fans and as skaters. But, you know, I think in every movie, like in a movie, not every single scene is a chase scene. You know, you have to have that build up. And so when you have moments like this or jams like this, especially with teams that are coming in with brand new strategies that we've never seen before, it almost, as a spectator, almost makes you catch your breath. So I would say an experienced spectator, it makes you catch your breath a little bit, because, you know, when someone breaks through or when something happens, that moment is very exciting.
Let's watch the next clip while we continue discussing this, because this clip is sort of a more extreme example of what we saw. I don't think they got past turn one this time. And I remember really enjoying this game at the time, but I remember also thinking that if every roller derby game was like this, I wouldn't like it. To me, it's sort of like baseball. You don't know what you're going to get when you go to the ballpark. It could be you get something 0-0, a pitcher's duel, 0-0 going into the ninth. Or, you know, people could be hitting the ball over the place if it's 9-7. You just don't know, because that's how baseball is. I don't know that that's a bad thing for a derby. This is pretty extreme, because I don't think that pack gets much further than that. And I don't remember. I think the packs were moving a little bit more at champs when we played each other, but not much more. I seem to remember this game as being a little bit more tense than that one for some reason. Anyway,
and which game?
I'm comparing the champs time we played Victoria in champs and at this tournament that we're watching now. Snarky, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I was just saying that was a nice hit.
Oh, people like nice hits?
Sorry.
I was going to say, watching this style of roller derby makes me miss big hits, and then right at the end of that clip there was one. So
and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful hit.
Good
Good job,
knockout.
knockout. You know, she does not disappoint with the big hits, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't matter what style of derby you're playing. From her, you're going to get the big hit. It's true.
It's true, and everybody loves a big hit. Let's be real. As much as we, you know, like to say, like, as officials and gameplay and strategy, who doesn't love some big, like, surprise at the top of the pack hit that just knocks someone out? It's an exhilarating thing to see.
I mean, that hit that makes the whole audience go, ooh, like, that's the moment. I live for that moment.
Exactly. That you have to be straight faced, completely neutral. I have no feelings about this hit.
I do think there's there's an element of that is like, that's the draw for the audience. Is like, oh, we're gonna, you know, it's a full contact sport. That's kind of the, you know, this is why people like wrestling, even though it's fake. People like seeing the big hits. Apropos of nothing, that's just my opinion.
Well, and it's also interesting watching Victoria and Gotham do this game versus maybe teams ranked number 300 and 310, because they have a different level of agility and quickness and strength that they can bring to this style of play, whereas a lower level league that is trying to emulate this can't necessarily do to the same kind of excitement, because there is a lot of movement here. It just doesn't move around the track.
Yeah, there's like a level of potential energy behind everything that you're like, it could explode at any moment.
Right. And I don't think not that many leagues can get that same kind of energy and explosion.
Yeah.
Apologies,
I don't have the official review paperwork. I just have the stats, and it would take. Okay. I could probably piece it together, but it would take more time than we want to give to it.
You're interrupting me, putting Shug on the spot. This is pretty different looking from when you were reffing for Gotham. We didn't do this back then.
Yeah, but I remember. I think it was Detroit, and you know, the referees had a pattern for the outside pack referees, and the pack never was making it around past turn 2. And I remember Bonnie coming to me and saying, "Hey, those outside pack refs aren't doing the rotation like they should." And I said, "You know, well, but they're covering it, and you guys aren't getting around the track, so I'm fine with it." I actually remember a discussion with her at a tournament on when this play started to go this way.
And that I mean, I've heard the argument, if you don't like the way, if you don't like a certain strategy, figure out how to beat it, and then the strategy will go away.
Yeah.
And we've had both of those things. We've had, I believe the pack rules were put in to stop the runaway game, where the jammers would just run away from the pack and not be scored upon that way. And
the blockers
would say it again?
The blockers would run away.
Right. And, we changed the rules so that wasn't possible anymore. And then now we have this style of play where I don't think there's much discussion of changing the rules to get rid of this style of play. We're just going to let teams try and figure out how to beat it instead.
I mean, I do think there are ways that could be done too. There are ways to counter this style of play that I think there's plenty of room to come out at this from a new perspective. And we're just kind of waiting to see it, waiting to see that innovation. And the next time somebody, complains about something, we have to make rule changes because they don't like the way it's going or whatever. Whatever we started with.
Aren't we already seeing it? I mean, I think that we see it every season.
I was going to ask you because, I was going to ask you, Snuck, because you're the only current manager here, so we are kind of already seeing it, aren't we?
I mean, I have nothing to say. All my secrets are being held. I have no comment to make. No, I mean, I just in terms of having watched the sport for a very long time and then becoming more involved and then becoming involved as a manager and looking at things more strategically, and then having a perspective as an official. I mean, I think that we see as rules changes have happened, and as the introduction of different large strategic gameplay, like from Victorian, comes into the funnel of bigger teams, comes into tournaments, you see a lot of development. I mean, if you look at the sport 3 years ago or 2 years ago, even, I feel like you saw a lot more movement along the track than you're seeing now. So I feel like of all the sports, it's a very roller derby evolves very quickly. Very, very quickly. That strategy every season to me seems a little bit different, and that there's always this talk of developing new strategies where instead of using kind of old plays. But maybe that's just my very small perspective coming at it as a newer person.
All right. Well, it's been just over an hour, so I think we're going to wrap things up now. And that was a lovely conversation. Thank all of you all for coming. And I want to thank, first of all, Kate Sarasara, who was our producer tonight and keeping things under control on the technical side, and actually had to watch at least one jam that she was a jammer in, as I think someone pointed out in chat.
I'm gonna break the wall. It was brutal. It was brutal.
You did phenomenally, Kate. You did wonderfully.
Oh, Gritty, Gritty, you want to say goodbye?
So I want to thank Kate. I want to thank all of the people who provided those clips to us, including Nerd Derby. And I want to thank Greta Turbo, our illustrious head of video, for finding and editing all those clips. And on that note, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for participating. Thanks everybody in the chat. Have a great evening. Well,
it's always fun to see people in the chat too.
Yep.
Hey, and stick around, folks.
Good night,
We're gonna run
everybody.
the clips and you can hear the sound. So stick around for that.
Three blockers out there for London with one standing in the notorious RED penalty box. So London very briefly about to be at full speed. Lexi gets around lead jammer Double H.
Beautiful work by Kamikaze Kitten. This is what she needed. Meanwhile, we do have Lester coming out of the penalty box. She is working the outside.
They are calling it. They're calling it skating out of bounds on Lester. She did just ever so slightly
Yes, she did.
cut her path to the penalty box. And Double H, I said it about 2 minutes ago, but that might be it, as we're going to have now a full power jam for Kami.
Costly mistake there for Lester. A 5-point pass for Kamikaze Kitten. Beautiful work on the inside. Nice work. Active offense from her blockers, opening a hole. This is a 2-wall up at the front of Denver blockers. She's coming against, forcing her to the outside.
Skating out of bounds, being called on Kami. That's gonna do it. That is going to do it well, we'll see how many points she got before she went out of bounds.
I'm not entirely sure what they saw there. I saw her getting blocked out of bounds. But on the is where she was, so the referees had a great vantage point. We do have a full complement of blockers. This is now a power jam for Denver.
It's going to be brief. This is the initial pass for Lester. She is through. 42 seconds left in the jam. Kami is standing. 38 seconds left in the jam. London should have some points on the board, but right now a 19-point deficit.
I do not believe they have enough to make up that deficit. That is a no pack being called. London is forced to let the opposing jammer go. Now we do have Kamikaze Kitten back on the track. Everybody is back on the dance floor right now. We've got a wall of Denver blockers keeping Kamikaze Kitten at bay. They are allowing some room on the inside, trying to get their jammer through. Kamikaze Kitten finds the hole on the outside. She is able to get past, and that is a 4-point pass, 5-point pass for Kamikaze Kitten. This game continues.
The clock ends. Denver celebrates, and that's why not. Score stands 229 to 210 unofficially. I'm sure we're going to have some conversations about those dueling skating out of bounds penalties.
Now it is 234 to 210, a 24-point game.
Clarity Way even doing a little wave of her own to not pay a ref. It's a friendly game. It's ladylike. Oh my goodness. Bonnie Thunders knocks Clarity Way out and then starts skating almost all the way back to the jam line.
She wants to get a running start for this pass. This should be interesting.
And here she comes. Harlot Viva trying to go for an anorexia going, but denied. Pina Colada goes no. What? Jammer.
Wow, Bonnie Thunders with a full run, dancing. The old soft shoe around all three Boston's blockers.
She is like a cat with a mouse. She is slapping it around the track, and Joan keeping her own attention, toying with our hearts.
And now she's had enough offense for now. Bonnie's going to skate a little defense. She likes to mix it up, keep it interesting for herself.
I have not seen something this forbidden, this unheard of since the Lambada.
And Claire all over her, right on top of her. Bonnie not giving an inch.
This is a definite unique strategy. We have not seen this yet on the track. Oh, she lets Claire get in and calls it. Oh.
Time is on the Gotham girl side.
And number 30, Athena to Crime. Alrighty then. So far, we haven't. I haven't seen any intentional manipulation of the miners yet. I wonder if we'll see that more in the second period.
Bit of a split pack here. I Am Pain up front, Athena to Crime in the back, and I Am Pain is through. Lead jammer for Charm City.
That's good.
I Am Pain.
Good opportunity for Charm City to bring that deficit down a little bit. Nice ownership of the front there.
I hear another whistle. I hear a major track cut. Just a blocker as Athena to Crime is now out of the pack. But I Am Pain is on a scoring pass right now.
Yeah, that was a major cut. I didn't see it transpire, but we're going to see a lot more major cuts probably.
Yeah, you know, I just saw something very interesting as Charm blocker 415 Holly Go Hardly pushed a Windy blocker, gave her a nice solid push in the back. She skated for about 3 feet, cleared some space. But right there was no loss of position. It's a no call. I think I'm in love.
I see Steel Magnolia in the box. Hippie Strong Stocking sitting in the box, I think. Or is that Steel Magnolia? Oh no, it is. Hippie Strong Stocking is on the track.
How could you miss those shiny pants?
I don't know. Those shiny speed ruffles. Susie Hot Rod is ready. Amphetamine is ready. Everybody else is ready. Steel's got about 40 seconds left in the box. Queens will wait this out as long as they want because they know that they can make up those points that they want. Brooklyn doesn't care. They want to go, but they're ahead. They'll kill time if they want.
And the crowd wants them to skate.
Steel Magnolia is out of the box. No pack with Steel Magnolia, smart job. Amphetamine tries to hop the line. Amphetamine cut some people, but I'm not sure the refs are going to call it. Amphetamine says hello to the VIP section. Susie Hot Rod is lead jammer. This is a little bit of bad news for Brooklyn. That big point differential that they had.
You can whittle it down.
It's been eaten away by these jams for the Queens of Pain. Susie Hot Rod's got one. She's got Hella, Schneid, and Fingers to beat. She's already got OMG's point. Oh, Susie gets one. No, she gets 3 and calls it, but Brooklyn does eke out 1 point. I'm sorry, that's 4 for Susie Hot Rod.
A lot of cowbells out there. We're making the place being circled by UFOs.
Isabel Ringer's like my cat. I can just find her by listening to the cowbell. Although I don't have cowbells on my cats, I just have.
Right, cowbells. I just don't clip his claws and I can hear him walking down the hall.
Cheapskate! Almost in the front of the pack, hits the wall!
Joey's game, that's right.
Giving Roy Stark a chance to get the lead jammer position. Tell you right now, Cheapskate, she is down to have her blockers up there to help her get a path. Ryan's getting a good job of putting it
Corey into the infield on turn 4.
Down to 17 seconds left in the jam. Both of the jammers stuck at the back of the pack. Not slowing down. Ooh, it is not fun to slow down, especially on the high point. Usually you kind of fall.
Must be all the rain here in Los Angeles slowing everybody down. Nope, that's the end of the jam.
Full 60-second jam, really coming off.
By the way, Los Angeles, Angeles winter reigns. It's Thanks for parking. We make you feel right at home by having your cars broken into here in historic Filipino town. There's a homeless guy taking a shit in your driver's seat right now as we speak. There you go. Oh, it's making you homesick, isn't it? It's like a Waffle House. Look at the pack. Look at the jammers. By the way, Filipino town is fantastic. Thanks, Filipino town, for letting us put up our dirty dog western on the wall. That was like Top Gun, except without a. That's a very 2010 era score at this point.
Anna Pavyuova returns to the jammer line for Victorian Roller Derby League. Misty Maven on the other side for Gotham. If you're just joining us, Gotham in the white, Victoria in the blue.
Anna Pavyuova sent to the outside by Benita Applebaum. Has to regroup. Misty Maven has been sent to the rear of the pack as well. Anna Pavyuova gains lead, goes down to the infield, and it has a no pass, no penalty situation. And some confusion in penalty calls. Anna Pavyuova picking up the track cut penalty.
Okay, yeah, that was a no pass. It was overruled by a different official, and now Anna Pavyuova sitting in the restaurant Gus penalty box. Misty Maven on the power jam for Gotham.
So, Misty Maven takes a spill. Gotham fortifying the rear of the line, trying to prevent the drawback. Bianca Sciaretta has to re-enter behind Misty Maven. And Misty Maven hops around the outside. She is lead. Penalty to Anna Pavyuova has expired. She takes a hard hit from Benita Applebaum.
Yeah, Benita Applebaum has been doing great work. Working in tandem here with Livy. Maven recycled. We're in the back straightaway. Bianca Sciaretta curls around Maven, but now they're both back into the original positions.
And a knot of skaters stuck in the back stretch. Advancing slowly, ever so slowly, to turns 3 and 4.
Applebaum and Darrell take down Pavy.
Misty Maven spins, tries to get some movement out of the pack. And a 2-minute jam, 3 points for Gotham, none for Victoria. Gotham now leading by a score of 36-19.
Those 3 points paid in full, I think,
Indeed.
on the track.
Likely get a bye to championships. So we could see this matchup again in November here in Montreal.
Anna Pavyuova and Kate Sarah are jammers of the right now.
Pack still moving very slowly. Anna Pavyuova the foremost progress. Anna Pavyuova has earned the lead for Victoria. Anna Pavyuova approaches on a scoring run. Kate Sarah Shoulders her way past Bianca Sciaretta. Bianca Sciaretta picks up a penalty for that. Didn't quite see what that was, but Kate Sarasara in hot pursuit. Anna Pavuova calls the jam.
Yeah, the apex jump of Anna Pavuova was thwarted by Violet Knockout.
So